Thank you, Chairman Graham, Director Wray. Good to see you again. On behalf of all of us, I just want to thank you and the 37,000 men and women of the FBI for what you do each and every day. In my own community, the FBI continues to make a difference. In just the last few months in Delaware, that ongoing close partnership with state and local law enforcement you referenced has produced arrests and convictions in drug trafficking, fraud, bribery, cyberstalking. I think we too easily forget the critical difference that the FBI partnership with state and local law enforcement makes, and I greatly appreciate your opening remarks. My own worst days in public service were attending line of duty death funerals for Officer Chad Spicer in Georgetown, for Sergeant Joe Zerba in my own county police department. I'll never forget those. Those are really difficult and hard days, and I'm grateful that you continue to remind us of that core part of law enforcement work, which is exposure to risk, and that we work together in ways to reduce that risk and to improve officers' safety. One of the things that my colleague Senator Cornyn brought up to you was the ways in which the NICS background check system was improved after the Sutherland Springs shooting by the passage of the Fix NICS bill, which just made sure that information gathered in one silo was shared across the whole system, because had that been done in a timely way, the shooter in Sutherland Springs would have been barred from getting a weapon. We've talked in the past, I think it was last May, about a bill that I have with Senator Toomey that would share with state and local law enforcement NICS denials. There were, I think, 99,252 NICS denials last year, which means someone who is a person prohibited from getting a weapon went into a federally licensed firearm dealer and was told you can't purchase. In some states, the state police conduct that initial transfer of information. Pennsylvania is one, so they immediately know about it, and they can go follow up and, where appropriate, arrest someone for lying and trying. In my home state of Delaware and 31 other states, that's not the case. This is a simple bipartisan bill. It would simply require real-time sharing with one state law enforcement contact of any NICS denial. Since we spoke about it last May, I wondered if you'd had any more thoughts about it, whether this is something you would support as a simple way to put more information in the hands of our state and local law enforcement partners, and whether you'll work with me in my office to try and get this through this committee.
Well, Senator, on the one hand, I have not had a chance to review the proposed legislation itself, but I do very specifically recall our conversation on this topic and how important it is to you. And I think there's sort of two principles at stake here that I think we're on the same place with. You know, one is the goal of keeping guns out of the hands of people legally prohibited from having them. And second, consistent with my opening statement, right, the need to support state and local law enforcement in their efforts. As you say, last year, NICS, I think, denied around 100,000 background checks, so the volume is significant. And my own sense is that what would be most helpful here is to have a conversation that brings in and makes sure that state and local law enforcement has the appropriate seats at the table, because I hear all the time when I'm out in the field with state and local law enforcement the burden that they feel they're under. So I want to be a little bit careful before we just dump all the information on them and
move
just kind
to
of
that quickly if we can.
Yeah.
Our last conversation was months ago in response to Senator Cornyn's question. You said Fix NICS saves lives. Every chief of police I've met with or spoken to in Delaware says they would welcome this information. I think they would handle it promptly and thoroughly, and I think they would help promote public safety with that information. I've at least two other questions in 3 minutes, so let me move. But I would welcome further engagement on this point. I think this is a common sense, simple way to enforce the laws on the books. Election interference, there's been a lot of questioning, which is constructive, I think, about China's intelligence efforts in the United States. I also want to make sure we've talked through about Russia's election interference. I appreciate your clear statements that they exerted improper influence on our 2016 election. They haven't stopped trying. They're still coming. We haven't successfully deterred them. On the appropriations subcommittee in which I serve, we put $380 million into strengthening election infrastructure 2 years ago, zero last year. It is my hope we will invest more in state and local election infrastructure. But you've created in the FBI the Foreign Influence Task Force. One of the things I'm concerned about is so-called deep fakes, false, manipulated, misleading media clips that are very difficult for the average viewer to discern. What steps is the FBI taking to address deep fakes, which in a number of briefings I hear is one of the most likely next order threats in the 2020 election?
Well, certainly, we share the concern about deep fakes as a potential tool, not just, frankly, in the malign foreign influence space that you've referenced, but any number of other contexts. One of the things that I did not that long ago was bring together all of our top executives for a presentation and then a discussion led by our Office of Technology Division, which has the best expertise from a technological perspective on this. I think the real challenge of deepfakes is that without the right kind of training, it's very hard for somebody to be able to distinguish and to be able to unpack what's a deepfake versus not. We are looking at different technologies that we might be able to have to help unravel that. So there's maybe some technological solutions. We're also trying to look at ways to partner with the private sector on it because there's a role where I think that they can play. So I don't think I have anything specific to report here, but I can assure you that this is a subject that has the concern of really everybody at the top of the FBI.
Well, I appreciate your clear voice on the ongoing efforts by Russia to interfere in our election. I hope we'll have the benefit of a similarly clear voice about the risks of deep fakes. Last question for you, if I could. I spent Friday in McAllen, Texas, with a number of my colleagues. Many colleagues, both parties, have visited the border recently. It became clear to me in the conversations I had with a few dozen migrants that they were all from Central America, had all fled significant violence and lack of order, and this is in El Salvador and Guatemala and Honduras. There is a program of the FBI, the Legal Attaché program, that has made a real difference, and I appreciated your highlighting that in your prepared remarks. Tell me more, if you would, about how the FBI legates and programs like the Transnational Anti-Gang Task Force are making a difference in confronting gang violence in the Northern Triangle and thus changing some of the circumstances that drive families to make the very difficult decision to risk a more than 1,000-mile journey to our southern border, because I frankly think it's in all of our interest to use our skills, strengths, and abilities like the FBI to change the conditions in Central America, to change the outcome on our southern border.
Well, certainly, Senator, we agree with you that our efforts through what we call the TAG units in Central America are one of the ways in which we at the FBI can do our part to help contribute to border security, but also just more generally the safety of Americans here inside the United States. The TAG units essentially provide a way for us down in El Salvador and in a couple of the other Northern Triangle countries to use the local law enforcement as a force multiplier. So we provide some of our expertise, some of our experience, some of our partnership, and then working with a larger group of local law enforcement. It helps them learn while doing, but it also helps them be more effective in tackling a very serious criminal problem down there. I've met with officials from that part of the world as they've come to visit me in the U.S., and something we're very proud of, and we think we want to double down on if we can.
Are you requesting additional funding for that program this year? Have you had any difficulty in terms of the continuity of effort?
I think we're humming along. We had some scares, but I think we're moving forward. Yeah.
Okay. I have questions for the record I'll send you about facial recognition technology and its your work with state DMV databases, and I just will add to what Senator Whitehouse raised in terms of concerns about how background checks are done, and look forward to talking with you about that further. Thank you for your testimony today.